Greetings, travelers.
We're here.
We're here and we're live. It's super exciting. I love it.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of these. So for those of you listening to the audio portion, this went out live on YouTube, but we're here. We're excited. We're going to be doing a lot of these. So
yes, with guest episodes, we will be doing them live, but they will be coming out to our podcast audience as well. So it's super exciting. I do have to say, I do have some breaking news.
Breaking news?
Yeah. So the breaking news is something very not great, but kind of weird, is the officials have confirmed the first case of the plague in Colorado in a human.
A bubonic plague.
The bubonic plague, which is the Black Death, which wiped out tons of Europe and stuff like that. There was literally a plague. Just for anybody listening and watching, the bubonic plague has been around for years. It's been transmitted in animals, that sort of thing. I remember growing up in California in Griffith Park, the squirrels had bubonic plague, and I saw one, and it's terrifying. But they have the first human confirmed case of the bubonic plague. So I hope they figure out very quickly how this person got the plague, and hopefully it's not something that's transmissible easily. And I'm sure a bunch of medical people can jump in, but I'm just saying that the bubonic plague. Anyway, that's my breaking news. Beau was very excited and decided that she wanted to get the plague, but I don't think she actually means that, because I don't think so. What that means. No,
I don't think so. But well, with that said, if you want to avoid the plague, you'll have a bunch of cats. That was what the reason the plague spread so much was, because they had burned all the black cats, as we learned from our history episode on the deep dive of Satanic Panic. That was the first one, was let's burn all the cats because they mean witches. And guess what that means? That means there's more rats, and they brought the plague. So
yes, rats with fleas, with amoebas on flea. Anyway, we could go down a whole thing. But we have a great guest episode today.
Yes. So I'm going to bring them on, and then you can go ahead and do an introduction, Erika. So
I would love to do that. So we got to meet Ashley at Smoky Mountain Terror. We were fortunate that she was in the booth next to us, and her sign said the Bone Witxh. So of course I was immediately intrigued with what was happening there. So it's super exciting. So welcome, Ashley. And do you want to give a little bit about yourself and all of that?
So I'm just going to kind of start in with how I got started, so you have an idea of where all this came from. But I'm a giant nerd, and I was actually looking for a Harry Potter convention. And I started Googling to see what I could find. And I found an actual pagan festival that was basing their show on Harry Potter. Like, you actually got divided into different little their theme version of houses. And I thought, oh my God, this is cool. I got to tell all my friends we have to go. So we really don't know anything about what we're getting into. And I was super excited about this. And I go in and I'm I see there's classes on bone divination. And I was like, that sounds cool. I want to jump in there and do that. It was a 3-day class. I go in, first day I walk out, I look at all my friends and I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And they're like, it's the first day. You will at least give it till the end of the class to see how you're doing. I was like, nope, this is it. I was already going through my head, picking out pieces I had at home. I was messaging my friends that I know who sew and be like, hey, I have to have a thimble. It's a long story, but I know this is something you're really into, so it has to be from you. And it just exploded, and I started signing up for all kinds of different shows and just traveling.
That is amazing. How long ago was that?
This is a little over a year. It hasn't been that long.
But I think it's fabulous when you find your calling and you know. So you started doing this and you created a shop, correct?
I have somewhat of a shop. It's mostly used for private readings, and then I can have people who can come and we do candle dressings, we do history of divination, because I took this really cool Harvard class online to learn all the different kinds, because once I kind of learned there was different ones out there, I was like, I got to know more about these, because a lot of people have heard of tarot, that's the big one that everybody's heard of, but I'm never heard of using bones. And then you have pendulums, Ifa is where they use dust and everything, and these it's sort of similar with the bones and trinkets, but it was like the African culture and everything, watching, like, you know, learning about that. That was amazing to see. And it's like, I have to learn about all these. So while this is my calling, this is my passion with these babies right here, it was just fascinating to learn, like, people like, you know, bibliomancy, like there's all kinds of different ones out there that even if this isn't your thing, there's other ones to learn about and enjoy. And I like passing that along.
I love that. And one of the things I want to talk about a little bit is we have a lot of, we call it the Appalachian witch community. So we have a lot of young people, not young age-wise, but newer witches and stuff like that, and people who are finding their calling. So you were able to find your calling by ipso facto Harry Potter default. I love the journey because I feel like I can almost do a little map of your journey.
We all have our gateways. Yeah.
Exactly. But what would you recommend if somebody wanted to start off by looking into what might be their thing?
Find the people. I mean, you can go and take college classes, you can read books, but it's a little different when you actually meet the person who puts the passion behind it. And I'm not saying teachers and stuff in a classroom can't do that, but when you have that person who has, it could be the most boring subject in the world, and you hear somebody who's passionate talk about it. I don't get into, like, you know, the goddesses and like the whole, like, you know, deities things, but when I hear these people talk about these things at festivals, when they talk about their deity, the way they talk about it, it's like, wow, I want to hear more about this particular deity, just the way you're talking. And it's like, if you can find people, if you can find like Facebook groups, or actually be able to go to some type of festival and stuff to meet other people who, even if you can like share stories, may not have the similar interests, but to be able to share stories and the passions and stuff, that will give you so much more than something you could probably ever get out of a book.
That's true. And we talk about that a lot, is find a group, find other people, and also decide when you find those people, do you click with them? Just because you find them and they may be practicing different things doesn't mean they're your people. But let's talk about, because I know that people who are watching and will watching are going, what is that in front of her? So we got to go there. We got to go to what's in front of you. What is in front of you right now?
So this is my personal bone kit. This is a lot of Native American based, but I do have a little bit of African and voodoo roots mixed in here. I am a bit of a storyteller. I do more problem solving with my bones. So for example, my teacher actually gave me this piece right here. This is a piece of a coyote because I was helping her in a class and we had to describe what a coyote would mean to us. And people are like, oh, they're cunning, they're alpha animals. And I'm just sitting there going, all I can think of is Wile E. Coyote. And I remember seeing online that they put a list of rules that the cartoonist had. One of the rules was Wile E. Coyote couldn't actually be hurt except if he did it to himself. Like the Roadrunner never did anything to him. And I'm like, this is self-harm to me. This is you doing something to yourself that you know you shouldn't be doing, but you're going to do it anyways. So when I talk to people and everything, and something comes up that, like, you know, you're harming yourself, you're letting the outside world get to you, this is the bone that shows up. And when I like roll, they usually cluster up. So kind of give you an example, like they'll break apart, they'll have spaces. And every bone reader kit is going to have different items. Like you put in items that you want, or you take out items that you don't want. I have mini starter kits and stuff that I sell, like if you wanted to get into this, but I tell people it's a starter kit for a reason, because if you decide something you can't talk about is love, then you don't put those pieces in there. Like I have a piece of rose quartz in the starter kit, and that would be something you would want to take out of your kit, because it's not something you would want to talk about if you're not comfortable talking about it. If you haven't experienced it in a way that you can talk to other people about it, you don't put that item in your kit. And like, I think one of the pieces that a lot of people will like see in their kit is a little skull to represent ancestors. So I personally don't bring any gods, deities, or spirits into my readings. I only pray to my ancestors, and a lot of bone readers and stuff will bring in their ancestors. So they have like a piece of a skull or something, or a little like miniature bead that looks like a skull that will represent ancestors. So that is one of the few common pieces that people will usually repeat, but like somebody else could have one of these items and it means something totally different in their kit than it does in mine.
Wow. So most of the pieces, because you have starter kits, did you get a starter kit or did you create your kit?
When I took the 3-day class, I did have a bit of a starter kit. I believe there was a buffalo tooth. There was my little skull bead in there. I think there was a couple crystals and like a safety pin. So it was a very basic kit and everything that I got. Because my teacher was Atlanta Moonfire and everything. I am very grateful for everything she taught me. But looking back to how like she read and taught the class, my biggest mistake was kind of going in there, seeing her read and be like, oh, I have to have this exact piece. It has to mean this. I have to read exactly like her. And then as I kind of like learn and grew with this, I was like, wow, okay, no, I need to make this my own. It has to be my own. I have to like make sure that I put the pieces in to mean what I want them to mean, which is why I have weird little stories that go with my bones and stuff, because that is my best way to communicate, is to tell these little stories that relate to animals. And that's why my kit is a very Native American based, because I have a beautiful Native American book that describes animals and like their spiritual meanings and stuff and what they represent, because it's very hard to take like certain pieces and just be like, oh, I see this, I automatically think of this. Because like when I use my raccoon, I talk about how raccoons are smart, intelligent creatures, but people call them dirty trash pandas. And it's like, no, that's not really what a raccoon is.
No.
And I mean, same with cows. I live in a farming community, so like I've seen how aggressive cows can get when they protect their babies. And it's like when you look at a cow, you don't see like a motherly bone really when you see mother cows. So like I have to be able to like reinforce that idea, like, you know, what are you going to know? What is going to come up in your head when I go to explain that? So that's why I kind of have these stories and stuff when I discuss, like, you know, what's going on in your life, what problems you're facing, and how they're going to relate back to the story.
When you come across, because I know nothing about bone reading. When you come across, do you find pieces and go, I need to add this to my kit? Do they like speak to you? How does that work?
In the beginning, I would only put in items I had, items that my friends gave me, or ones that I bought from my teacher, because I thought I can't just go into a store and buy something. And during Christmas time, they had these little miniature like ornaments for little like mini trees, and there's like a bubblegum piece in one. And it called to me and it was like, you have to buy this. And I'm like, I have no idea what I need this for. And I get home and I'm like, I don't even know what bubblegum is. So I like started Googling, and strangely enough, it came up that it was like a slang term for female genitalia. And I'm like, why would I put this in my kit?
Okay.
I'm like, this is really weird. So I put it in my kit. And surprisingly, I have a lot of women who come to me who, like, they got out of a relationship, or they're trying to figure out why they can't make a relationship work. And that's the piece that pops up a lot of, honey, you have to learn how to love yourself before you can let anyone else do it for you. And I have actually used that piece a lot in my readings, and I didn't know why I needed it. But you want to start out small when you do bone reading, because there's so much that can be said. This piece means this one way, it can mean something else the other way, or it could just not be speaking, depending on how you put it in your kit. It could mean something when it touches something else, when it lays a certain way, when it points a certain way. So the more you add to the kit, the more convoluted it gets. So should you sit down in my chair for a reading, I am not just going to start popping off with stuff. I will literally sit there and stare at what's going on. And I tell people, you don't have to talk to me. You don't have to come with a question in mind, but you have to give my brain a minute to start putting these pieces together, to see how they land, to see what I need to say to you. Because it takes me a minute to put all this together. And I could start talking, and we could start in this chunk right here, and you'd be like, I have absolutely no idea what that means. And then we'll keep working around my board. And depending on how you are, depends on how I like move around the board too. I have people who tend to wear masks. Like, they have a mask at work, they have a mask at home, and they have a mask they wear to themselves. So I tend to read on the outside and work my way in with those people. I have a little Guatemalan worry doll that actually represents the person I'm reading. This is something that's meant to like put your worries and like frustrations and stuff in. So when I do readings, you actually get to take the little doll home with you, because I want you to hold on to it, to remember everything we said. I don't want you to get up from my table and be like, oh, that was cool, bye. A lot of people who sit down in my chair don't realize, like, we're getting into some things. We're talking about your problems here. Like, I'm not going to be your love life. you can sit down in my chair and be like, I would like to know this. And I find a lot of people who actually ask about their love life, I will be like, I'm sorry, you have to work on these things before you can actually find real love in your life, because you're not prepared for it. You haven't, done the things in your life to actually be able to find real love, to be happy with it. So, like I said, the more you add, the more you can tell a person, the harder it is to read, though.
No, that makes sense. What about taking away? I'm curious. Are there ever any times you're like, this piece should not be a part of my kit anymore?
I've had a frog that kept jumping out. He's actually pretty heavy frog too, which is funny, because that's what my teacher always said: if they want to run away, let them run away. And I don't read for myself. I know a lot of people who will try to flip tarot and read for themselves. I am one of those people who, as weird as it sounds, I'm kind of anti-divination and everything, because I'm really leery about like the right person reading me, like knowing what people are going to say, how they're going to say it, how they're going to communicate with me. Because it's not like you just sit there and tell a person they're going to die in 7 days. You're going to tell them why. You're going to give them information. Those are what I look for when somebody who's doing divination. Not that you should be telling people when they die, but that was the first thing that for some reason popped in my mind with that. But
I don't even want to know why that is. I'm gonna continue.
I'm concerned right now, but
yes, that's a little scary. But go ahead.
But I did have a frog piece and everything that every time, like, I would lay out my bones, because I put these in a different wrapping and keep them up, and then I pour them onto my mat here. It kept falling out and going out, and finally, like, its little legs were breaking, and it was like a very thick metal. It shouldn't have been breaking like that. So that's when I was like, okay, you're not meant to be in there. But I found some other frogs that were set up differently, and they are in my kit now, and they are not leaving and running away from my kit. But when I go to pour stuff out, I will notice certain pieces will come at me like, hey, you need to pay attention to this. Like, it was funny, I actually dropped a piece at one of my last shows, and it was my education piece that represents, like, if people are in school and stuff, because I was seriously debating going back and looking at doing like psychology classes and everything and getting my master's degree, because I'm like, I would just be doing it for these people. Like, it's not something I would pursue as like, a career. And I'm like, when that piece fell out, I was like, okay, that's you speaking to me. That's you telling me to go ahead and do this, because you are jumping out because this is something that you want me to do. And I was like, I took that as a sign, like, okay, this is what's going to happen.
This is just so
there's so much there to unpack. Yeah, this is a lot. So now you said you've got pagan influences initially started this, right? But then you're adding in all these cultures. You're doing it like a melting pot, which is amazing.
I call myself a chaos witch, in the sense that I like to learn a little bit about everything, even if I'm not going to actually do it, because I just find a joy in learning about things. Like I said, I learn about all these gods and deities, ones I'm never going to believe in, but it's like learning about them. It's like, that's really cool. That's really interesting. And like, I've taken like all kinds of classes when I can come across any kind of pagan festival and stuff to learn about like, different herbs and like, candle magic and all this stuff. It's like, it's cool. But when I say that, I've always done that. I've always been that nerdy kid at like, conventions and stuff, like, oh, they're going to teach us a class on how to knit wash rag ninjas. And I'm like, okay, let's go learn how to do that. Oh, they're going to have this class over here that's going to teach me this. Let's go do that. So it's like, I've always had that like knowledge to learn. And I think that's why, like, when that education piece fell out, I was like, I knew it. I was like, I knew this is what I needed to do, because it was hard when I started, because I thought like tarot and everything was like, I'm going to tell you your future. I'm going to tell you when you're going to die. I'm going to tell you when you're going to find love. And when you sit down in my chair, I tell you things that I probably shouldn't know. But also in that breath, you knew what I was going to say when you sat down. And I will tell you things. It's almost like you were thinking them, but you needed to hear somebody else say them to you to be like, yeah, I knew that was a problem of mine. I knew I needed to fix it. Before we started this, you had asked if I would give a reading on air, and no, I have been asked for other things that I have done to record me for a reading, just little snippets, and I can't do that, because I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. I don't know what I'm going to say. I know you're going to need to hear it. And over time of doing this, I've learned that I have to say it. I've had problem in the beginning, because like oh, well, you sat down in my chair, you wanted to hear about this, and all I can see is this, and I don't know how to talk to you. And that was when I was charging like $15 for a reading, because I was like, I don't know how to tell you that that's not your problem. This is your problem, and this is what you need to hear. And then I finally got to that point where I'm like, oh no, you sit down, let me tell you what you need to hear. Actually, it was at Smoky Mountain Terror. I had a mother and daughter sit down, and the daughter needed to hear something else. And the mother was so adamant for me to talk about her job. So the mother sat down in what I call my little boyfriend chair, because, I always have an extra chair if somebody wants to sit. And I asked, are you comfortable with her sitting here? And she's like, yes. And I started talking because she wanted to hear about the job. And I just boom, boom, boom. And they're like, wow, oh my God, that was spot on. That was amazing. And then I looked at the mother. I was like, ma'am, I need you to get up. Me and your daughter need to have a talk. She needs to hear something else that I don't think you need to hear. So if you could just get up and walk around, look around, and come back later. And I had the daughter in tears and stuff when we were done, but she heard what she needed to hear.
That's what we've got many friends who do, spiritual and counseling and other things like that. And they're like, that's why they hate doing the group sessions. They're specialists that do the group things. But with this, sometimes something's calling to you saying, I got to talk to this person. I got to talk to that person, and I got to have some one-on-one here. I'm sorry. But that's the way it works. Well, yep. Jake's right. Sometimes truth is harsh, but it needs to be heard. There you go.
Well, I have a question too. So you touched a little bit on confidence, right? And understanding as you got into this, because you come across as a very confident person, right? Confident. That's the word I use, by the way, in case that got mixed up with competent. Same thing, but I'm talking about confidence right now. Wow. Hearing myself talk, I sometimes wonder how I do a podcast. But I'm wondering, when you started, you went, this is the thing I want to do. Was it like a switch flipped and you had the confidence and you were able to do this? Or were you like, I love this, I have this affinity for this, but being able to sit, because talking about some of this stuff can be really intense, right?
Yes and no. I am a very confident person before I even started with my bones. My problem was I thought there was supposed to be set ways to do things. Like you had to follow a certain path. It wasn't until I made it my own that I realized, okay. And even with confidence, the thing I've had to be like, am I about to out this person? Like I've had a gentleman sit at my table who was like, are you sure your friend's okay? Are you sure you don't want him to walk away? And then I'm like, have you thought about being gay? And then he's like, oh yeah, no, that was on my mind. I was like, okay. Because sometimes I'm like, did I just out you in front of your friend? Am I exposing you to something that you're not ready to be exposed to? Like, that's my biggest issue. Is like, yes, this is something I need to draw out and talk to you about. But also in that same breath, am I going to open up a can of worms that's going to make your life worse when I throw this out on the table? Which is one of the reasons why I was looking at the psychology degree and everything, because maybe I am saying things wrong, that when I go to tell people what they need to hear, I've rubbed them so raw that they don't know how to put themselves back together. And I want to make sure that I have the tools that you know what to do. Because that is actually one of the newest things I have just finished making. I will be selling at my next event. Is I have made how to journal booklets. Because I started thinking about this. I tell a lot of people, you need to journal. And then I started thinking to myself, I can't just say that to a person, because a lot of people don't actually know how to journal. Like, when's the best time to journal? How often should you journal? Where do you start? What if you can't write? All these questions. So I literally wrote out like how you pick what time to write, how you schedule to write, what kind, like, and then I have prompts and stuff for like, I don't know what to write about. Where do I start? Like I talk about, if you can't write anything, start doodling. So you put some sort of feeling on that page to go back to and everything. Cause like, I realized just telling somebody to go write in a book is not going to help them. So I have that I am ready to set up and start selling those. And then I am also working on a Should I Quit My Job workbook. Because I get a lot of people who are like, oh, I should honestly quit my job. Like that. And I'm like, whoa. Let's back up and see what your job is doing for you to see if it's really worth quitting. Or maybe you just need like that mental stimulus here on the side that's going to make that job worth working. Because I'll give you the best example. Me and my hairstylist were talking about this, because she's like, oh yeah, no, I knew when I was in school and everything, this is what I wanted to do. Like, you know, and I'm like, was it though? I mean, did you look at the business end of it where you were going to have to be like filing taxes? You were going to have to be putting like a business name with your LLC, where you're looking at like, you know, doing building codes and all this stuff where you had to, she's like, well, no, I didn't. So you can't 100% say this is absolutely like the best part of your job. Like this is, and she's like, no, you're right. Like I did this job because I love it. And yes, there's things that I absolutely hate about it, but those good things outweigh the bad. And that's kind of where the workbook's going to come into, where you break it down, and maybe there's just things that you're missing in your life that like you can do to actually make the job worth staying at. And then you'll maybe be able to see like, okay, I see now. And I only have so long with you at my table and everything. Even if we did a private online reading, I only have so long with you because I can't stay with you in your life and walk you through and make sure. So that's why I'm trying to create things that are like, okay, she's not here anymore, but I have a guideline of how I can try to work on my like roller coaster of a life and get to that up part of the roller coaster so I can enjoy when I go down. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what this is. Like this is not your typical like I'm going to tell your fortune, your future. I am telling you your problems. We are going to work on them together. And yes, I throw my ancestors in there because those are the ones that I trust. Those are the ones that are speaking to me. And I invite you when you sit down to bring in, if you have God's deities and stuff that you believe in, that you want their help, absolutely. Bring them in. Let's talk. Let's do this. Let's pull all our resources together and work on this.
I love that. Okay. We are in the podcast world going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with our amazing guest. I know Mark desperately wants to play this break music, and
I'm going to play it real quick. Let's see if it works.
Okay, fine.
Oh, that's the wrong one. I screwed it up.
This is why we can't have nice things,
sorry,
Mark.
Sorry, Beau. I screwed it all up. This is why.
That's okay. She's gonna totally.
She'll do what she's got to do. Never mind.
Will.
All right.
Prepare to be devoured. The Wolves of Wharton is a 6-part complete book series by Eerie Travels producer Beau Lake. It has been called dark and visceral, steamy, dramatic, and a fresh take on the werewolf mythos. If you like action, adventure, a large serving of body horror, and some steamy relations, the Wolves of Wharton series is for you. Pick it up wherever books are sold, or at linktree.com/Beau__Lake.
Most know Florida as the land of endless sunny beaches, but the state is home to numerous eerie legends and mysterious creatures. The Everglades is home to the elusive skunk ape. In Key West lies an uncanny doll reputed to have a life of its own. Join Mark Muncy and illustrator Carrie Schultz as they uncover the history behind the state's creepiest stories in unusual locations. The Dark Side of the Sunshine State, presented in Eerie, Florida, from History Press. We broke.
What?
We're breaking.
We're already broken, Mark. We're now unbroken because you cannot be trusted with buttons, apparently. So actually, I want to talk a little bit about you now, though, because to have gotten into this at all, what is your life experience that kind of brought you to this? That right there. That life experience that brought you to this. Tell me about it. I'm curious.
Happy accidents, I guess. That's like kind of a loaded question right there, because if I look back on all the stuff that's ever happened to me in my life, and then had I done any of those things, I never would have done other things in my life that I find happy and enjoyable. I mean, I applied for a job in Japan, and because my college wouldn't give me my diploma in time, I couldn't take the job. So I ended up moving to California and traveling with a band and doing this like cool side thing over there. And had my parents not got sick to where I had to move back home to Tennessee, like I wouldn't have been here to do something like a pagan festival to learn about bone divination. So this never would have happened. So like I can't knock anything that's ever happened in my life because it's all led up to where I am now. And if I had done anything different, I wouldn't be sitting where I am right now.
No, that makes sense. Have you always been very sensitive though? Like, have you had paranormal experiences and stuff? Like, where does that come from? Because most people wouldn't just go to a festival like that. I know the Harry Potter and I get it, but most people would not be like, you know what? Let's go to a pagan festival. That's my idea, you know?
I was actually just talking about this, and I kind of watched my father, and I always thought he was really good at reading people, like, and he's not a mean person, but like we would introduce him to somebody and then that person would walk off and he'd be like, I don't like him. What he said, hi, like, how could you not like, I don't like him. What does that mean? And like, when I was a little girl, my father traveled for work. I was in the bed. I don't know why we had this rule, but we never answered the phone after we went to bed. It was, you know, my mother basically had the life of a single woman and everything because my father was always gone for work. And so we never answered the phone after night. Like when we went to bed, like we never answered the phone. I got up on my knees in the bed. I looked at the wall. I reared my head all the way back and I smashed it as hard as I could in the wall. Don't know why I did it to this day. And my mother comes running in. Oh my God, what happened? What happened? She's trying to treat me and the phone rings. She answers the phone. And it was a police officer saying my father had literally just hit a tree. He was okay. He was okay. But I always felt like me and my dad have had weird connections and stuff like that. And I feel like if he actually had a way to like talk to people and do what I do, he could do it as well. But this just isn't like, he's never had like a source to do it, if that makes sense. But I always remember like looking back at some of the things over the years and stuff that have happened, like we've always been connected and everything like that. Like we have done things similar. So, because I always look back, like literally when I hit my head on that wall had to be the same time he would have hit that tree. And had I not done that, my mother never would have got up and answered the phone to find out my dad had hit the tree. And I know that's a really weird story, but all these little things that have happened over time like that make me kind of think I inherited this. So like when I say like, you know, I pray to my ancestors, yes, I have, but I also kind of maybe pull from my living family and stuff who can do this too. That is actually one of the things I am working and learning, because I've always heard people go out and talk about like touch grass and do this. And I'm like, I am really bad at this. I am doing something wrong. And I went to a palm reader and she talked about, well, for your first problem is when you're going out there standing in the grass, your feet don't pull energy like that. You do a lot from your hands. Your problem is when you do readings, you pull from inside yourself and use that energy instead of pulling from the environment around you, and use your hands when you do this. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was an option. And it's like learning things, and it's like, okay, so I need to start pulling energy, because I do, when I do like very long shows, like I will go home and I will sleep as soon as I get home. Like I will crash and burn and everything because I was pulling a lot of energy for myself. And it's like, I feel like a lot of what I get is I get from my ancestors, and then I get from the people who are living it, even if they don't know it. I'm getting stuff from them. We like, it's an inherited thing, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense.
All right.
And
so I have a question. When you're doing a reading, now we have quite a number of friends who are spiritualists, mediums, and other, you know, and tarot readers and other things like that. One of the things, the hardest thing for them, they always say, is what they call facing the shadows, which is where they have to, you know, how to handle like cards or readings with negative associations and breaking bad news. Like you said, you've only got so many days or something like that. How do you handle, you know, potentially difficult subjects with your audience, you know, your participants?
That's probably what took me the longest to kind of learn, is how to just be blunt and say it. Because I found out in the beginning when I was trying to like not talk about the bad, because they didn't want to hear about the bad. They didn't come to sit down and talk about that. But it's like, they kind of need to hear about that. They kind of need to. And I've had people who come down. I had a lady, I believe she was from Sweden, and she just felt, because she couldn't get a hold of her family and stuff, that one of her relatives had passed away. And she kept asking for me to look and see. And I kept saying, that's not what I'm looking at. What I'm looking at is the ancestors around you are like, they're there for you. They want you to know that even though you kind of feel alone because you're here and they're over there, they're here with you. And regardless to what's going on over there, they got you and want you to know that. And she got very upset because she wanted a, definite answer. Like, she wanted me to define. And I was like, that's not what you need, though. And that was really hard, like learning to work to say, I understand what you want, but that's not what you need right now. And that was my biggest thing, is to learn, I'm only going to tell you what you need to hear. Like, you may want this, but that's not going to help you. And me, telling you this is not going to make you feel any better and everything. This is not what we're going to do here. And they may leave disappointed, but they heard what I needed them to hear. Now, whether or not they want to use that information, that is up to them.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Thanks. Yeah.
What about when it comes to doing readings, what are some, without sharing people's very personal information, what are some of the more interesting stories, things that have maybe surprised you?
I was actually at a festival, and like I said, I have my little boyfriend chair in the corner, and this girl had to be 15, 16. She wasn't that old. And I kept seeing like a small child, like it was an actual birth, like this was your child, while I was reading. And I'm like, this is really weird. She doesn't seem like the type to have a kid. And I started talking. She's like, I don't have a kid. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm pulling from the mother. So I was asking the mother, I was like, and she's like, no. And she had actually finally turned around and started listening to what I was saying. And then she goes, oh, that's my son. He died. And the daughter goes, oh yeah, pulls a vial of his ashes out of her shirt and holds it up and goes, yeah, this is him. And I was doing a reading on the brothers, and he was concerned for his child. And I was telling all the stuff about the stepmother and the child to them. And like, once again, it's like, I can tell you this. Now, what you choose to do with that information, whatever happened, I do not know. But I didn't know I could do something like that until I did it.
Oh, wow. That's fucking amazing.
Yeah. And then I had another unique one. I have my worry dolls all in a little bowl, and, I kind of toss them in there, and she went to go pick one out, and she was a very spiritual girl, and one was stuck, like hard stuck, like unusually stuck and everything. And as we were going along, and I'm like, and I'm like, this is really weird. And then I realized, you have a stalker. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, so that's what that other doll clinging so hard to each other was. Like, that was her stalker. So I actually ended up giving her both worry dolls, and I was like, this is your worry doll to work on everything that we talked about. And I tell people, like, once you've kind of situated what we talked about with your bones, to take your worry doll and go bury it in the earth. You're done with this worry. You don't need it with you anymore. Go bury it. If you're still worrying about the issue, keep a hold of it until you fix it. But when you're done, bury it in the earth. I gave her the little stalker doll, and I was like, put a little cayenne pepper in the toilet and flush it down. I was like, you just get that out of the way. And that's what she did.
Make a sour jar. That's what our Appalachian witch community calls it. Just make the sour jar, put it away. So it's all good. So now with that, just saying that just reminded me, what do you have any other, like, now that you've done all this studying and all this, are there any other like rituals or practices that you've brought in that you didn't expect, or things that like you wanted to add to this? I'm sorry, I threw it off course.
Sorry, that is actually an interesting question and everything, because, and it's funny because I actually am getting to actually teach a class on bone divination. I'm going to have like 50 kids sit in front of me as I talk about this stuff. And I actually have a little section in there just to talk about divination and all the different kinds that are out there, because I want you to be able to go out there and research and look all this stuff up. And it's like, everything I've been taught's been an open practice. So like, I know there's a lot of closed practice that probably have like a lot of cool things and everything to, even if I couldn't like take from them, which I wouldn't want to learn because I'd be so scared I would accidentally put that in my practice, if that makes sense. But I probably have learned stuff that I don't realize that I have actually incorporated into what I do, that I don't, like, from other people who do divination and stuff. Like when I was saying I did the palm reading, she talked about how I was really bad about holding my cards close to my chest, and that I needed to get in the game and pull them up so I could see them. And I was like, that meant so much when she said that to me. And I was like, all right, I gotta go find a playing card. And I found little mini crystal playing cards to put in my deck. And I was like, that spoke to me. I was like, that's got to go in there. So it's like when you do something that puts weight on me and I'm like, okay, I like that, I got to find a piece to represent that. Because for the most part, whenever I get a new piece, I just kind of throw a little sage and stuff around it so that it's like whatever's going in there, whatever was on it is off. And I use tobacco cologne because I have so many people in between. That's the easiest because, you know, can't necessarily always burn something when I'm at certain facilities and everything. So I use tobacco cologne to cleanse between each person. And I invite people to touch my word dolls because I'll be cleansing them because I want you to pick a piece that speaks to you and everything. And like, you know, once again, if something sticks to it, if something means something. And like, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't ever give a piece of my kit away if I needed to, if it called for that, because if that was like this person needed it more than me, like they would get that piece. And these are like my babies. So when I say that I really would feel that they needed that piece. Like that would mean something if I did that.
I have a question. Have you ever had somebody sit in front of you? Because I've talked to some people that have had some very interesting situations with people sitting in front of them. Have you run into a situation where there was more around that person than them?
Yes and no. Like I've kind of felt like they weren't sitting alone, but like for me to tell you that I saw something or anything like that, no, I might have felt a little heavier when they sat down. I actually did the in Paducah, Kentucky. That was like the best place for the eclipse, and I actually had a couple like little journalists come around and ask me, "Well, do you feel any different with this?" And it's like, honestly, no. There's this big like big event happening, and everybody's like, "Oh, I feel so much powerful. I feel," and I was like, I actually feel more from the people who are sitting down across from me because non-believers are suddenly believing a little more. Like people who believe in like, certain deities or gods and stuff are like feeling stronger in their belief. It's like I felt more from other people than I did from anything else around me. Like,
oh, wow.
If that makes sense. Like it wasn't necessarily what they were bringing with them, but I could feel more that they were open and bringing and doing all that with like whatever they had to go with them. But that, I don't know if that made sense or not when I say it like that. Yeah. But
so what do you say to those like skeptics and stuff like that come around and are like, oh, this is, I don't believe in any of this. Generally they don't interact with you, right? But for the ones that do, what do you say?
So I actually have a Witches in Media that I will go to conventions that I'm not even doing my bones at, that I like to teach people about witches and stuff. So like how the media has constructed what we believe in. Because I always put my favorite witch up first. And it's Lilo from Lilo and Stitch. And they're like, what? I thought this was a witches panel. And I was like, yes. When she's making the little jar, that's a curse jar. But what did y'all think? I mean, she's got the little fish over here. That's her little deity. And it's like, y'all didn't put the pieces together? She's a little witch. And everybody's like, well, oh. But I invite people. You can buy nothing from my booth. But I want to educate you with anything that I know to make you feel better about what I do. And I actually do put out little signs on my booth. So if you're too scared to talk to me, you can read the description of what I do, what I believe in. I invite you to come ask questions. You don't have to buy anything from me. If you have a question about this, come speak to me so you understand. I had a lady who spoke to, her daughter came up and spoke to me, and she was very upset. She's like, I can't believe you went up to that booth. And she accidentally wandered into my Witches in Media panel. She listened to me talk, and she came out and said, I am a very like hardcore Catholic. And I just wanted to let you know, I was kind of upset and everything with you being here. And then while I would never do this, listening to you talk made a difference in like how I look at this. And I was like, I'm happy with that. Like that meant something.
That's a door. That's all it takes. Good.
No, absolutely.
Building bridges.
Yes. So my question, if I can remember what it was, because that was fascinating and now I don't. Yes. My question was around, in giving these readings, what advice would you give to people who are going to seek out people to potentially give them readings? I know you were set up in the booth next to us and you were doing these readings, and I specifically, as Mark did, just tuned out what was happening for the privacy of that area next to us, and you did a very good job of that yourself. I don't even know how you did it, but it was very like you couldn't tell anybody was there. But my question is, what advice would you give to people going into getting a reading? Because I think some people do this for the novelty, but even talking to you, it seems like, you could sit in front of you for novelty, but that seems like that might end badly for them, because you're going to have this revelation potentially of stuff that's not like cute. And you're like, you'll jump into princess, or non-binary charming. Like that might not be what's happening from the conversation, right?
So the first thing is, listen to what they're telling you. Are they telling you what they do, or are they selling to you what they do? And I am 100%, like I said, I will 100% educate you on what I do, even if you don't want to do it. Even if I know you're going to walk away from my table and I will not make $1 off you, you walk away knowing what I do and you have a better understanding of that. And I find a lot of people in the metaphysical community are very, this is what I do. And while you may not like accept it, you don't hate it because you don't understand it. And like, I'm a big accept this versus tolerate that. Like there's a difference. And I sometimes think people forget those are two different words. And I'm still like a baby to this community. Like I said, I am still learning new things. Like anytime I can take a new class, learn this, do that. Like, I'm there. Let's do this. And it's like, how can I hate something if I don't know it? How do I know I don't believe in this if I don't know it? Oh, I learned about this. This is not something I want to believe in. And it's like, when you want to walk up and go to a reader, honestly, you will feel it in your gut to be like, oh, they full of crap. Or no, I talk with passion when I do this. Like, I mean, I know I do, because I get excited to talk about my bones. I can hear a change in my voice and everything when I talk to people, because I get excited. I want to tell you about this. Like, I don't get tired of explaining this to people because I want you to know. And it's like, when you hear me talk about something versus when you hear some of my friends who are sitting at the table, like, you can tell they're regurgitating stuff they've heard me say, because this is not like, they're not anti this, but this is not their thing in the same way. So it's like, when you go to pick a reader out and everything, when you look at their table, like, hey, this is what I do. Like, can I tell you a little bit about it? But if they're going to try to sell you on it, be like, you need this. Let me tell you what's wrong in your life. Let me tell you what you need to fix. No, that's not what a reader is going to do for you. That reader knows that when you sit down, like, you're paying for their time because they're going to give you something that you need. And I think a lot of people, if they're just starting out and they're new, they want to undercharge themselves. And I can't say anything, because I did the same thing, because I was like, oh, what I do isn't worth this. I can't charge. I can't. Wow. I can't. And it's like, then that's the kind of reading I gave them. I stuttered. I didn't know. And it's like, now I'm like, I'm more confident. I know what I need to say. I know how I need to say it. And I'm going to charge my worth. Like, it took me a hot minute to learn that. But it's like, now when people come up and they're like, you're charging how a month? And it's like, it's fine, because I know the next 10 people who walk up are going to want a reading. So I'm not worried about that one person who wants to walk away from that. And also, in that same breath, when you walk up to somebody, if they're, trying to coax you into it, trying to beg you, trying to sell you on that reading, that's not who you need to go be read by.
No, I love that.
In any field, ghost hunters to demonologists. If they're charging for their services, that's fine, as long as they're covering their costs and their time. If it feels exorbitant, walk on. Just walk on.
Yeah, if it's not worth it to you, it's not worth it to you. That's the truth.
And get out of what you put into it. So, but now one more question from me, and then I'll let Erika do a couple more. But I have one more, which is, so we're in the modern world now, right? We're in the future as far as this comes from. But now we are we're going back to this. We're finding this return to spiritualism, this return to our roots as it was. So where do you feel, is this going to evolve further, or how do you feel this is going to keep going?
I was in a broom closet I didn't know I was in, I guess is the best way to look at it. Like, I feel like sometimes the pagan community is so scared of how other people are going to react around them that they're scared to kind of open it up to bring in new people. I went to a festival, and for fun, because we had a little bit of downtime, I grabbed one of my girlfriends and I was like, let me give you a reading and everything, because you haven't had one. Let's see what I can tell you. And I hit hard. I broke her a little bit when I gave her a read. And it's not that she didn't need to hear it, but I was like, okay, I'm sorry. Let's go shopping in the next town over and just kind of get away from everybody and take a break. And we, 25 minutes away from this festival, found a metaphysical shop who knew nothing about this festival going on. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. And then I kind of looked around and like nobody in the area knew what was going on. Like the festival had just invited people that they knew, like their group. They kept everything very hidden. They didn't put signage up for you to find. Like you had to really we had to search for this place to find where we were going. And that's kind of what hurts me a lot of times. And it's not that I don't understand what's going on. Like there are bad people out there. There are people who will do bad things. I understand that. But it's also really sad for the people who will find this community and grow and flourish from it, who want to come out of the broom closet per se, or don't even know like the closet exists, like that there's this whole world out there. And it's like they're missing out on all this stuff. Like I said, without me having searched for a Harry Potter convention, I never would have known about a lot of the things that are going on now, like that has changed my life. And it's like I question how many people are out there that didn't find these things, that didn't find these people that they needed to find. And that's what really upsets me a lot, because it's like they needed this group. Like, I'm not saying everybody's open and great and cheerful, but a lot of the people that I met are very open and cheerful and everything. It's just they're scared and everything of what could happen if the wrong people found out. Like, and it's like it's sad, but it's like that's the one thing I wish that we could change, is be like, we can be out, we can be open, and there's no reason to hide it. And it's like, and it's not just pagan groups, there's other communities and groups that do the same, and it's just bad that we have to do that.
I agree, but having you on shows like this and stuff, and that's sort of our thing, is to get the word out there. We get asked all the time. So with that said, I have an important question for the very end, but let's do a little bit of shameless promotion, because you do online readings and things like that. So where can people find you?
The Bone Witxh with an X. If you Google that and then correct Google search saying I did not mean witch with a C, you will actually pull up a lot of my information. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. You can email me at thebonewitch@yahoo.com. Basically, if you put the Bone Witxh with an X, I promise you will find me. And yes, I do online readings. And I'll be honest with you here. I prefer you look me up and find me at a show, because that reading will mean so much more to you in person, with that energy exchange, with everything that's going on. And it's like, don't get me wrong, if you really do need me and you need that online reading, I will 100% do an online reading, but they are not the same. And while we will get to where we need to get to, it'll take longer. It will not feel as good as sitting across from me and getting what you need from me. And that is one of the things that I will always say, like, I love technology. Like, I love all the things on technology. Any kind of like mental health, like challenges, problems like that, like definitely, like, come see me in person, because like I always say, journaling, pen and paper will be better than typing something on a computer. Like it makes a difference. And if you need the online reading, I will be there for an online reading. But if you can find a list of my shows and stuff, which they're all on Facebook and Instagram, definitely hit me up at one of my shows.
Very cool. Okay. And before Mark takes us away, I do want to remind everybody that we will be at Smoky Mountain Bigfoot on July 27th. So come see us there. And Squonkapalooza on August 10th and 11th. I should have mentioned that at the beginning, but you can come out and see Eerie Travels there. But here is the most important question. It's not the most important question by a stretch. What house are you?
I'm a Slytherin.
Yes, I knew it. I knew it. I could feel it. I could sense it. Yes. Anyway, okay. Now that that's all resolved, the biggest issue of the day has been brought out. Thank you so much for being here, Ashley. It has been absolutely wonderful meeting you, and absolutely wonderful having you on the show with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was fun, and I hope all your listeners and stuff got something out of this. Even if you never get a bone reading, you learned something about it.
I have no doubt they have at all. I know Jake is one of our most loyal fans here, is already like, to the Instagram. So he's already there. So yep. Mark, with that, over to you, my friend.
Well, I'm just going to say thank you all again for joining us. We're enjoying doing these lives and hope you'll keep watching those with us. We've got some big ones coming up this weekend. And for those of you on the audio portion of the show, keep tuning in. Don't worry, they'll make their ways here eventually. So, and you're only a few days behind, so it's all good. And thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to our Patreon supporters who actually help keep this show on the road. And please support our advertisers that will be inserted here, thanks to Beau's amazing production skills. And with all that, gang, I just like to say thanks again, Ashley, for coming on. It was really an honor, and I've learned a lot of stuff about bone casting. I knew a little bit, but now I'm learning more. So I'm eager to delve into this a little bit more myself. So I will tell everybody out there, thank you so much again. Please like, share, subscribe. We're on all the socials at Eerie Travels. Visit EerieTravels.com if you want to ask us some questions so that we can ask guests like Ashley and stuff like that. This is where we get these guests, is from questions from you all. And we do them on our listener questions episodes. And we've got a few of those coming up. We got another live listener tales. If you've got any tales of encounters or anything you want to, please, EerieTravels.com, contact us, comes right to me. And with that all said, I'm going to say, remember, when you are experiencing a casting or a tarot reading or a bone reading or any divination, protect your own energy, allow them to protect their energy, but take in what they're giving you, experience it, learn from it. That's what this is for. It's all about sharing and learning from it. And with that, you can open up unlimited possibilities. And we will see you on the other side.